So, hello and greetings to everyone. We just have to review. We just have to start. So, thank you so much for making that time to be here. My name is Osinakachi Akumakalo. I'm the lead faculty of this program, and with us is one of the easygoing persons in the longevity community. He's so passionate about longevity education, and they decided to solve one of the important frictions in the longevity movement. So, longevity education has been something that has been so fragmented and not properly consolidated in the past. So, Professor Tor, um, tried to solve this problem with his team by establishing one of the first uh, longevity institutions in the world with complete curriculums, right? So the Geneva College of Longevity Science happens to be the first longevity institute with full-scale studies. You can do some course programs with them. You can do a master's with them, and we hope that it advances and progresses. I think under his leadership as the president, a lot has been happening. So Afrolongevity happens to be a strategic partner for them, and they've been very helpful to us in helping us to frame our educational program. And if you check this, some of the certificate that I posted, you will see the logo of Geneva College of Longevity Science. So they are our academic partners and they help in sending their faculty to this program. So most of the faculty fellow that delivered in this program, like Professor Shavita Moore is also a faculty fellow with them. So um, I would like to welcome him and yield the mic to him and for him to give us a little bit background about a little bit information about his background, and then we get into the lectures proper. Thank you so much, Professor Dominic Daw.
Thank you for the warm welcome and hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As in background to my own person, I studied medicine a long time ago in Austria, Vienna. I never finished that. I actually continued to do pharmacy and economics. I was always interested in doing research, and really after some time on the job in various functions, I came back to doing research, and I got really uh, completely passionate about longevity research. It wasn't called longevity back then because this word wasn't used so much. It was regenerative medicine and its possibilities and what it can do for everyone. But as pointed out by the kind introduction, there needed to be a place where all this information is being pooled and vetted because there is so much out there in terms of biased information, of maybe things that are being reported on that already can be available, but they come maybe with an unregular or unregulated status, not really sure about safety and efficacy. And this is something that the Geneva College of Longevity Science, GCLS, really wants to do away with, to ensure that there is high quality when it comes to the education of medical experts in the field, but also some other stakeholders, because we don't only have medical doctors, thankfully, studying with us. We have people from other healthcare backgrounds, whether that's nutritionists, physiotherapists, fitness trainers, but also investors and regulatory experts, because that's the beauty of longevity science, or maybe one of the difficulties associated with it. It's a very broad topic. It involves not just medicine, but lifestyle intervention, supplements, psychology. And very soon you ask yourself, if we want to change medicine as it is now, traditional medicine, into ultra personalized preventative healthcare approach, then how can we finance that? How can we make these things available to everyone? So there are very soon legal questions and finance questions. So therefore, it makes for an interesting topic to discuss. And I'm here today to discuss a little bit about the education and how ideal longevity clinics should look like. So if that's okay with you, I will share my screen now to share some slides here.
Go
Um,
ahead.
Thank you. Can you see them?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So the talk of this talk is called "How to Design, Run, and Future-Proof a Next-Gen Longevity Regenerative Clinic," and I want to start by first trying to summarize the term longevity medicine, because longevity is still a very tricky word, because a lot of people associate that with, just living longer, which is not the immediate focus point of our efforts, but rather it's about health span. It's about having more healthy years. And in order to achieve this, longevity medicine is an ultra personalized and upstream neuroscience informed approach. So, meaning we apply neuroscience or the science of longevity in modulating the biology of aging in a way that we do it preventively. So, not starting with this when there is an issue, or when we talk about aging when you're already old, but way before that. And the idea is to really manage aging as the biggest risk factor, and thereby managing its downstream consequences, which are the diseases that typically kill us as we grow older. So if that might not be as easy to grasp, you will get it as I go along. But I think it's very important to summarize that there currently is no longevity medicine education. So this is one of the best universities in the world, Stanford in the United States, and the medical program for the medical doctorate. And if you look at it it's small in here, but even if you spend more time on it and see it really zoomed in, you won't find any longevity in there. So even when you go further and look at the American Association of Medical Colleges, which lists more than 200 different medical specialties. So whether that's pediatrics, for kids, psychiatry, brain injury medicine, addiction medicine. So there are tons of specialties and subspecialties, but there is, once again, no longevity medicine. So it shows you we are here at a very early point in time where things are still being formed and being discussed, and sometimes it's very hotly being debated. Even the word longevity, should it be maybe health span? Should it be healthy aging? There are lots of good arguments for all of that. But maybe instead of focusing too much on individual words, let's think about ideas and think about issues. And one of the issues is that on a global scale, people start living longer, but not necessarily in a more healthy fashion. So while you win additional years, typically people spend these extra years suffering from an illness, or maybe chronic disease, or multiple ones. And that is something that is really a big stressor for healthcare systems, even in the rich countries in the Western world. It's very hard to be able to afford that, because people live long, but they spend these years from an individual perspective not with the best quality of life. And from a societal point of view, this is just very costly, because you have to invest ongoing into their care. So we need to do something to change this. And the science really has already moved on. So we have a much deeper understanding of what aging consists of. And the best model that we now have are the hallmarks of aging, which are interrelated factors and drivers of aging that all work together. And we have shown that you can stall aging, that you can change aging, that there is a difference between biological age and chronological age. So depending on your lifestyle, on external environmental factors, the things that you do on a daily level, and many other things, and of course, so your genes to a certain point, two people that have the same age in their passport might not be, from a biological point of view, the same age. They might work, so to speak, at different capabilities from a biological point of view. And we have the biomarkers to now understand that, to measure. And we use AI tools to have a deeper understanding of the data that we generate. And we now have emerging geroprotective strategies, so trying to slow aging or modulate aging. And this actually works pretty well in animal models. In humans, it's still something that we work on how to optimally translate that. but we definitely have a lot that is going on in terms of science. And this very much reminds us of a time, maybe 100 years ago, when it was public health that got created, which was part of medicine back in the day. But then we suddenly understood, okay, what are germs? What are bacteria? What is making us sick actually? And as soon as that was discovered, and this is the way here, we have now these discoveries, a new field of science has been created, and this has changed the way that how communities live together, how cities are designed, and this helped tremendously to increase life expectancy, to avoid disease. So it's very important whenever we talk about longevity, we talk about education and, of course, the science, because it's education at the moment that is the bottleneck. We have these scientific findings, but it's really hard to ensure that that information gets everywhere and people can trust that information, because there are wonderful podcasts, there are wonderful people that spread information that probably have a very deep insight. But if you just look at a TikTok video, 30 seconds on longevity, this is not going to give you all the information that you need to make a good decision about your future health. And those medical specialties that look at aging so far, like geriatrics, they typically are all about managing people that are already in functional decline, older people that suffer from diseases. And it's extremely important to think about how to alleviate that. But longevity medicine is a more forward-thinking approach where you start preventively and focus on those people that are still at least appearing healthy, that are younger. And we start with very early diagnostics, trying to change risk trajectories and go into ultra-personalized regimes for lifestyle, for supplements, for maybe hopefully medical intervention when it becomes available on a wider scale. So I think what's very important to say here is that even now, today, our understanding of longevity medicine is very much shaped by the healthcare systems and the culture that we are living in. So wherever you go, it's completely different. The European Union is a place that is more conservative than many others. So therefore, when it comes to modern diagnostics, I think we cover a lot of good things here. But from a regulatory point of view, many of the things that might have been available already are available in Asia, in South America, like exosomes, stem cells, peptides, some of these words that carry a lot of promise, but they're not yet available because the truth is we have limited clinical studies, we have limited safety studies. So it's not maybe at a point where we want to expose a majority of patients to that. The United States are different again. They are more fragmented and they have a leadership, at least at the moment, that seems to be very open to some of these ideas. So you now see peptides being pushed. The Arab countries are very interesting because they are sort of, and I hope nobody misunderstands me when I say a sandbox in this case, because they are small, they have a tightly controlled leadership, they have typically a lot of money, they have small populations, and they have some underlying healthcare issues that the government wants to address. And therefore, they are very progressive and very future orientated in how to tackle these things, and they're very open to these concepts of longevity science and medicine. So it's really interesting to see how this is shaping up. And then there is, of course, Asia, and when we talk about Asia today, it's mostly about China, where it's all about scale and things are still very much integrated in their healthcare system. So in Europe, in the United States, longevity medicine really is out-of-pocket expense. In China, maybe it's going to be part of the public healthcare system because there's such a tightly controlled leadership. So something that very shortly needs to be maybe discussed here is that we shouldn't wish for longevity medicine to become a specialty, a medical specialty right away. There is very good arguments why its principles are relevant across many different fields of medicine: primary care, internal medicine, endocrinology, preventative medicine. So it really takes from all those, and it also gives back new concepts, how to improve upon them. So therefore, I think it's good at this moment that we have all those experts from different fields going into this longevity medicine sector. And we see when we look at other fields that those that have taken more time to think about, okay, how should it be look like ethically, what could be international guidelines and so on, before they get specialized as something specific, they have a better acceptance by everyone. So therefore, it's not something that we need to rush. We need to rush understanding and information and hopefully awareness by the wider population, but it's not about just formalities, if you will. The core domains of longevity medicine, I think that is something that we should cover very quickly. Of course, it's biogerontology and geroscience. So these are the mechanistic understandings of the biology of aging, the drivers of aging, and how we could potentially intervene. The diagnostic and technology part is extremely important because there is so much happening here of how we can better understand the rate of aging that our body is going through and the changes it's making. So we are talking about extended blood panels, multi-omic testing, from glycans to epigenetic testing to genetic testing to modern wearables where young people are super willing to share a lot of interesting data, and AI that is, or machine learning at least, that is assisting us in making sense of all of that. It's preventative longevity practice, so how we can preventively address these things and how can we translate the findings from early clinical studies to our patients. And it's of course personalized. It goes into the mental and social factors because lifestyle is so very important to longevity and mental health also. If you're not in a good position or a good spot mentally, you're not going to be able to take care of yourself or others. And it's the small decisions every day. So when we look at what has the most dramatic impact for longevity, it's actually not maybe unfortunate in the minds of some people. It's not shortcuts. It's not taking one pill that is going to change dramatically your outlook on aging and your risks of reaching a high age. It's the daily choices that you make. And this, of course, makes it very hard to act upon. But by making transparent, thanks to diagnostics, the big impact that has, I think this is going to motivate a lot of people. We will talk about the ethical requirements to when we talk about longevity medicine, and of course policy is important. As I said, we need to understand what doctors can actually offer to their patients, because some of the things that are being discussed and everybody wishes for are just not legally available, and in many cases for good reason. But beyond just the knowledge, there is sort of a competency that is also important, right? So doctors that go into longevity medicine, you want them to have, a critical eye, but an interest in what's happening in terms of emerging interventions and understanding, how to make sense of all that data that is being generated. Because if you have tons and tons of results of tests, it doesn't mean that you make the right assumptions based on them. And you have to integrate that into daily care. And you need that ethical judgment to say, okay, this is the right thing. It's not about creating insecurity on the side of the patient where you just say, well, you're biologically older, then people may go, completely nervous. It's all tools that should help you find the right kind of treatment for your patients. And you need to think longitudinally. So what we mean by that, over long periods of time where ideally the doctor has a common journey with the patient. So this is actually leading to what we call a concept of responsibility longevity, responsible longevity, where we address, ethical questions and look for a long horizon population level implication of this science. So once again, not just fancy longevity clinics for the ultra rich, which is one of the maybe arguments why people are not in favor of longevity medicine as of now, because they see it as something that's only benefiting a few, but rather thinking about how can we make all that available to a broader population. And of course, also in different regions of the world where, as of now, there are different problems and there are maybe less investments ready for that. So what's very important here, and this of course goes back to why we created GCLS, is that the problem is that if you have a non-institutional longevity medicine that is developing fast, but mostly controlled by companies, even smaller one, then you have a problem with oversight, with accountability. There is a commercial element to it, where it's suddenly a company that needs to make money or is built to make money, that makes decisions which kind of innovation it should drive, etc. There's going to be more inequality. There's going to be pseudo-clinical authority. So people that will assume authority and say, oh, well, I'm the expert for everything in terms of longevity, that might not be suitable for that. And we need institutions to take care of ensuring that there is high quality in education, and that every information that you get is vetted by experts in the field, so that it's also uniform and not fragmented. And institutions can do this because they provide stability across many different levels, and it's really helping with a continuation of across generations of practitioners, so ensuring there is a consistent level of quality that increases, that there is new research that is being done, not driven by monetary motivation, but rather by an interest in further the whole field of science, and that research goes hand in hand with governance, with peer review, with ensures there is scientific credibility, and that you have a balance between the wish to have the most modern, most up-to-date kind of treatment and intervention ready, but at the same time, it needs to be supported by evidence. We have to know that it's actually working and not just a promise. We have to know that it's safe, that you're not causing maybe more damage by trying something that is simply not ready for the market. And we have, of course, different educational models. I don't want to promote them here, but we have a master's degree. We're following up with a PhD. So this is the academic track. And then we are continuously upskilling doctors. So we have a CME program, a continuing medical program, that is very pragmatic, let's say. So it really looks at it from a physician point of view. So what should be done? What should be tested? What are the interventions that can be done? How can you integrate that successfully into your clinical practice? And it's really about empowering physicians. And we're very proud to welcome now, I think, physicians from more than 30 countries worldwide. So it's really a fast-growing community where there's a lot of professional exchange, because this is nice. Typically, our students are very accomplished people. It's not just doctors, it's people coming from all kinds of background. But also for the doctors, these are often working within their own clinics or larger hospitals or something, and they come with extensive experience. And this is the sort of, also communication that you need to establish, where you have to offer a platform, because this is also where a lot of insights are coming from, as these things are early stage. You need other colleagues to say, well, okay, this was my experience with that. There is not a textbook available for everything that happens in longevity. And there is a chapter that I wrote for an upcoming book of the Springer publishing house, which is all about longevity medicine as a discipline. And I'm mentioning this because I had a gentleman helping me as a co-author who is very accomplished in this regard, because he's the head of the R&D department in Abu Dhabi. And Abu Dhabi is the only country in the world where there is already a clinical guideline for how longevity clinics look like, what they need to do, what they need to offer, what they must not offer. So that has been extremely helpful in trying to establish some ground rules for how longevity medicine should be practiced. But this brings me, because I mentioned Abu Dhabi, to the question, actually, what is a longevity clinic? Because before we say how it should be designed and run, maybe the question is what it actually is. And you see now a big range of different kind of clinics. So actual medical clinics, some that are more like gyms, others that are more catering to a select group of professionals, executive health. You have luxury destinations, of course. When you go to Dubai, you have fancy hotels, and they have wonderful clinics inside of them. And then you have some virtual clinics, because there are some very interesting tests that you can now do at home, and you get your results. And then maybe there is like a doctor attached to that, and they give you some recommendations, or maybe they want to sell you supplements. So they come in all forms. And the question is, there is actually a web page that asks you find the right longevity clinic for you, and then you can go through these samples here. There are others. You have concierge longevity physicians. So these are the famous doctors that maybe you've read some books from, Peter T and others, and they cater to a very select group of rich individuals that want to have their doctor on their phone 24/7. And I think this resembles the fact that we don't have clear education as of now. So this means everybody does what they think is right. And some of these examples are actually very good, and some others are not so good. Of course, in a hospital setting, if you had a longevity clinic there, which is rare, you have access as that clinic to all the different kinds of testing. You might have a lab in-house, etc. So this is actually very convenient. But on the other hand, if you're catering to the general population, you might not have all the fancy tools available, because it's just too expensive to do that kind of test for everyone. So Switzerland is interesting, not only because we are there, and because you have a high life expectancy, but because it's, again, like the UAE, maybe a small ecosystem. And we have a very, very strong biomedical and translational research history with strong pharmaceutical companies like Roche and Novartis and some others. There is a high trust regulatory system. So, I mean, obviously, everybody knows that Switzerland stands for a certain kind of quality in everything that we try to do. There is a dense cluster within Europe with AI and digital health. It's maybe, I think, the most advanced country in that sense. And there is a strong collaboration between all those players. So actually, I think it's a very good test ground to see what works in terms of innovation, safety, and how to harmonize all of that. And when you think about a longevity clinic and what it should do, actually it changes biology by a certain degree, because these are things, when we talk about it, it's not just you break your leg and then you get like a cast around the leg and that's it. But actually the decisions are being made are like, oh, how do we affect hormonal levels? What do we do about your metabolic system, and etc. So we're actually talking about big decisions here. It's trying to predict future risk. It's about modifying biological pathways of aging itself, and generating tons of data that is actually very sensitive. And maybe in some cases use advanced therapies that exceed the standard of care. So they are actually really forward thinking. And if you look at all that, then it's definitely not a wellness center. It's really something that's more like a hospital department, because it needs a very responsible kind of leadership, and it needs to look at evidence, and it needs to sort of keep learning. The whole team needs to be upskilled all the time. And you have to think about how to keep that data safe. Because, I mean, if you have a complete analysis of your genes and your DNA, that shouldn't fall into the wrong hands. So it's actually a big thing. And we have recently released what we call a Swiss framework for healthy longevity medicine clinics. This is obviously not something that we wrote to be the truth for the whole world. This was really for our Swiss environment, but this is how we think that clinics should look like. And that, together with a well-trained physician, I think is the future of what longevity medicine should look like. And something maybe that makes sense to repeat here or cover is the clinical longevity pathway, because what we want to see is measurement. I mentioned several times how important diagnostics are. So we need to establish a baseline, and from that onward, optimize the patient's health by reducing risk, by optimizing care, And once we have done that, we measure again, and then we start enhancing, and we see that there is a continuous improvement. But of course, as this is something that goes along with the patient's life and age, there will be new challenges coming up, because obviously when you have a young patient, then there are different factors that you need to consider than when the patient is older and maybe has to deal with a high degree of inflammation as a background noise of the biological system. Well, I will go over that here very quickly because it's just adding more information and detail to the concept that I just said about what we are going to look for. But the idea is a tiered patient journey. So there are always objectives, and you then escalate. So you cover the basics, and then you go one step further and one step further. And that all guided, of course, not just by ethics, but by ongoing tests and trying to make visible the changes that are happening in the body. And these are some of the measurements that can be taken. We are not just talking about aging clocks or trying to make transparent the biological age of a patient, but it can be simple things like functional testing, like waist circumference, to look at, okay, how heavy is that patient? If the patient is overweight, then there is going to be issues that increases inflammation and many other things. Look at his body composition. How much lean muscle mass does that person have? When you grow older, you lose muscle, so it's best to start out with a healthy amount of it. So even as you grow older, you can still, go shopping, move around. That's extremely important. Of course, there are blood markers, extended ones, and there are many new imaging tools that we now have to understand the body on all of its forms and levels, and they are interesting. But once again, the important stuff usually is the easier one or the more basic one. This is where we need to start. And this is what we call the Swiss ladder, right? So it's a graded therapeutic hierarchy. We start with the foundations first. We talk about lifestyle intervention. It's very hard. I mean, it's simple advice, but it's hard sometimes to follow that simple advice. Do more sports, eat less sugar, go outside. I don't know, avoid too much sun. It's adding up. Of course, it's easy to say you need to improve your sleep, but I mean, how do you practically do that? But once you have the foundations covered, then you can look into escalation using pharmacological measures if they're available. And of course, as the treatments become more novel, more experimental, the more the doctor has to look for protocols that actually work, ensure that maybe this is a clinical trial where they onboard patients, because this stuff is, of course, also dangerous if it's done in the wrong way. And therefore, governance is extremely important. So this means you need somebody as a leader of any such clinic that is accountable and who's trained in longevity medicine or the next best thing. You need ethical oversight, like an ethics board, what you see often in a kind of hospital setting. You need radical transparency. You need to publish, of course, in an anonymous form, everything that happens. You need to have clear safety protocols. You need continuous quality monitoring. This is not like a wellness clinic where you just walk in and out because you get yourself a massage. We're talking about actually doing something about the biology of aging that we want to interfere with. So this is probably not something a lot of the doctors are very happy about when we talk about this, because this really goes into a domain they're less interested in. They want to work with a patient. They want to improve, which I think is true in most cases, the quality of life of a patient, which is really the goal of longevity medicine. But it's important, all these factors, they need to be kept in mind. And well, digital trust is something that is increasingly important now. But at the same time, I mean, I think it goes beyond what we have been trying to discuss today. So that said, it's extremely important that we have the right longevity workforce. The doctor in such a clinic is always the patient-facing professional. When you go in there, you see your doctor. But at the same time, none of them is working on their own. So they're always part of a team. Because when a doctor gives you advice on lifestyle, when they talk about nutrition, exercise, they're not going to create meal plans for you or workout plans. Usually they have a physiotherapist, a fitness trainer for that, a nutritionist, etc. So, and then of course, nurses are extremely important because they are facing the patients. In many cases, when the patient leaves the room and the doctor started telling them very clever things, they have no clue what's going on. They need somebody to translate that. And they go outside and they start talking to the nurse and say, well, nurse, I mean, this is what the doctor told me, but what I'm supposed to do now. So you need these health coaches, these nurses for follow-ups. You need the experts in terms of exercise, movement, food, in terms of, to really follow up with your lifestyle optimization. There might be psychologists involved because once again, it's extremely important. Stress is an extreme importance factor for disease. You need to look for your sleep. These are things where it's only also about well-being. We have wonderful studies that show that people can benefit greatly in terms of their health from social connections, not feeling, lonely, not feeling all left to themselves, but rather having people to care for them, or the other way around, to care for others. So longevity is not always, just hard facts. It's soft facts too. And of course, the doctor, they run these tests, but who's actually, giving them the results? So they are working with laboratories and biomarker experts, companies in some cases, data scientists. Um, it's actually quite big. It doesn't mean that a doctor on his own in a small clinic can't offer such a service because they can work with partners, etc. It doesn't always need to be everybody being hired in the same entity, but still, there is a certain complexity to it. And the doctor, of course, is always central in that. So there is sort of steering this. There have been some presentations where longevity medicine is shown as a pyramid, where you start with the most basic, the lifestyle intervention, and then comes the more fancy stuff, right? So maybe the supplements next, and then some kinds of medical intervention at the very top, the sort of things that are, as of now, still regarded as early stage, which you can only access through maybe, let's say, a clinical trial, or in some countries where everything is allowed. And that is not wrong. But at the same time, what we proposed is actually not a pyramid model, but rather something like an hourglass model, because we wanted to have the doctor in the center, because they are important. And when you look at who are longevity physicians now, they come from all sort of disciplines. You couldn't say there is like the perfect longevity doctor needs to be an internal medicine specialist. There are some people who say that, and they are right in terms of, their understanding. Internal medicine specialists have a very good understanding of what's going on in your body. So some of the systems that are actually the drivers of aging, and they are used to spend a lot of time understanding their patients. Whereas, for instance, a surgeon usually is not the kind of doctor who you speak to a lot of times, but rather, you go under on the surgery table and they fix something and then you're out of the door again. But it's not just internal medicine, right? Because hormones are extremely important. So the endocrinologists play a big role. Actually, a lot of what we see of regenerative medicine, so those advanced therapies, is coming from plastic surgery, because plastic surgery very often is the top domain under which regenerative medicine sits. So there are tons of other experts. And then there are the general practitioners, the doctors that you normally go to see if there is some issue. Who's to say that they're not the perfect longevity physician, because they are the ones that you go to anyway, and they are the, so to speak, the first line of defense when there is an issue. They are the ones who see you regularly. And this is something that you should take away from this webinar. When we talk about longevity medicine, it's something that's not happening just once. This is a journey. So you set out on that journey together, hopefully with a great captain. This is the doctor. and they give you a better understanding of where you're at the moment. And in many cases, when we talk about, well, this is your biological age, these are your results, it doesn't even mean there might be something wrong as of now. It's just maybe more of a picture, a snapshot as of now, where you are heading and whether you are at risk or not. And this is something that's beautiful. In the past, we were thinking like everything is predetermined. There were our genes, our DNA. We can't do anything about them because we get them from our parents, and this is going to decide whether we're going to live long or short, or whether we fall ill or not. But the truth is that it's not just about the genes that we have, it's rather the genes that are being activated. And that is being decided by epigenetics, the structure that sits on top the genes. And this responds to your daily choices, also to, of course, to your environment. So this is when we go back to lifestyle intervention, why we say this is so extremely important. And it's nice because I think our grandparents always, and probably their grandparents, have been telling the same things. They knew you should do sports, or go out there and move, at least not extreme sports. You need to look at what you're eating, etc. This is not new. It's actually quite boring to hear that. But now we have the insights exactly why you need to do this. And I hope this is going to motivate more people. And I think it's nice because longevity medicine really covers so many domains. It's so broad. So when we talk about it, it integrates many things. And I think that explains why it needed its own institute. And this is why it needs, further specialization, because it covers a lot of ground, and it's going to able to benefit a lot of people if done right. So with that said, thank you very much. And maybe there are some questions and room for further discussion.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that wonderful lecture. It was very sleek and as usual. So let me get the fuller listening. So we now get to the question sections, the comments, and other aspect of the class. So please, if you have any question, there are a lot of people writing down questions in the chat box. If you have any question, please feel free to raise up your hand, and I will call on you to ask your question. Questions? Okay, so there are some questions that I think some persons ask questions. I think there was a place that you made a statement and someone asked if can I get the question now? So the longevity doctors will come from all disciplines. So someone asks question like that.
Yes, definitely they do. I mean, at the moment, there is nobody controlling the word longevity doctor, so any doctor could claim to be one. Thankfully, it's part of the routine of doctors to constantly learn. It's something that they need to do. They need to collect certification points every year. They do that. And in the past, I think sometimes they were doing just going to a conference that is nice and get a good dinner. But they can do it, get these points also focusing on longevity medicine. But I mean, it's a question of trust, and hopefully you have a doctor that is trustful. And if they say they're an expert on this, I know a lot of them that are maybe not, so very good in this. But I don't want to take away from a doctor the possibility that they can get all the information, because this is public information. All those clinical studies that were run, etc. They are available, they're out there. And I know there are many good doctors that have been working hard to ensure that they offer the best kind of medicine to their patients. And whether they call it longevity or not actually is not very important. It's more important that it's personalized, that it's preventative, that it's future orientated. And hopefully, of course, we will help some of the doctors to get easy access to that information, because they are busy people. They don't come to us because they say, I'm unable to find information, but I want to be sure it's the best one, and you guys vet it for us.
Okay, I think some of these questions I do I do meet some questions like this. You remember what happened after the World Health Organization problems, and some of the challenges I had with the World Health Organization through WAMS. And later on, we went to Dublin for the Dublin Declaration, led by Aubrey de Grey. So I was signing, and I happens to be the African that signed then. So immediately I was invited to Cape Town to that this in Africa, Cape Town got um, the highest number of longevity clinicians. Um, so, so I was invited for to give a talk on the Dublin Declaration, and then to tell them what's new. So I just explained to them, and I also encouraged them that whenever there is an event, there shouldn't be these parameters, this wall, because most of the longevity, some of the longevity doctors try to put up elite event, what they call, smart doctors programs. And when I'm always invited to keynote the event, I tell them that there is no way. It's not, longevity is not something of the elites. There are basic things that we need to really do. And most of the, let me say, Caucasians that uh, that is in South Africa that try to integrate because they got partnership with Swiss clinics, and they try to integrate those model. It causes some sort of problems because some of those practices, longevity practices, it's just like a kind of a leapfrog. It tried to leapfrog the biology of the Black population that is totally out from their biodiversity and availability. And just as one of the teachers here mentioned about, I think it was Professor Natasha that talked about the culture of longevity. You cannot just totally remove people. I think there are things that has to do with refining or remodeling, and then allowing people to really make sense of their own longevity through their point of departure. And it becomes problematic, which is why most of the longevity doctors makes it a thing of the elite. And these are the things that I keep on saying, that I keep on emphasizing, that longevity is not a thing for the elite. And I tried to do a little bit of critique for Peter H. Diamandis for his event. It's quite expensive. You make it in such a way that unless you have money, you can't have a longer life. So there are basic foundations that we also need to really stress on. And you did mention functional medicine. I think one of the doctors that works with us in Afrolongevity did say, "Oh, we don't need to make the Afrolongevity event a fusion of the past and the present." I said, if you don't accommodate the past, you can't progress to the future. So I don't want that fancy idea of let's be segregative. Oh, I have this knowledge and we can't deal with the past. There are problems that the mainstream doctors are also solving, and I believe that there is also a point of convergence in practice. and also in education with regards to longevity. And these are the things that I want us to achieve with Afrolongevity, and not to really forget where we are coming from. There are ways we can join the longevity revolution. I think that's the core of why we are assembling people across the African continent, and for us to really streamline and find our place in the longevity economy.
Well, absolutely. I think that it would be wrong if we make any kind of medicine only available to the rich. It's of course a fact that if you want to have a doctor spend a lot of time on your testing results, on advice, that it's going to be more costly than just being in and out. So getting a vaccination, that's a thing that takes a few seconds. But of course, if you want to go through all the tests and they should sit down with you and spend some time, this is a limiting factor because, of course, the doctors, their time costs money as with any expert. So I think we have to consider from the perspective of society that if we make that kind of expensive medicine available to everyone, what would be the result? And I think the result is going to be that less people will be sick as you grow older. They will be more capable of being active members of the community. They might even want to work longer. And this is going to, in the end, cost us less money, even if we have to invest early on into preventative measures. So it's really a call for preventative medicine. It's not about trying to say, well, this is longevity and it should be done, and that one is traditional medicine, it shouldn't be done. Because a lot of times when you go to a longevity physician and they do their work properly, they will find out problems that are like traditional medical problems, and they start treating those because this is something that needs to happen right now, and only then we can talk about optimization. I think there was one question that I saw about my statement that it's not about the genetics, but rather the genes that are being activated. So when you look at research of why people live longer, then I think it's now pretty much clear that the majority of that lies with the genes that are actually active. So if you have them, you have so many genes, not all of them are working. And the reason for genes being activated or not is the translative mechanisms, right? So they need to be sort of accessed. And the DNA is wound around histones, so proteins. It's tightly wound because it's so long, otherwise it wouldn't fit into the cellular nucleus. And the reason of why they get activated or not actually is epigenetic, this system, because the epigenetic system is changing all the time. It's little chemical markers that say, well, this gene is active, this gene is active, this gene is not active. And then again, because it's so tightly wound around the protein, the translation machine cannot access some of the genes. So if it's wound in the wrong way, this is just the explanation of why our genes are not always active, all of them. And we actively can have an impact. So as we grow older, this epigenetic setup is changing, but it's also changing due to the lifestyle decisions that we make. So every one of us has the opportunity to affect that. And if you do something different for 2 weeks, it's going to be a different epigenetic age, if you will, that you are going to have. So we shouldn't like lean back and say, well, it's just the genes. Just as we don't have to say, well, it's just for the rich people. Actually, most of the things that seem to work are the boring stuff, the cheap stuff, because everybody can do sports. And of course, eating clean and good stuff is going to cost more money. So that is a little bit more difficult. But we also have tons of insights. And I hope it doesn't seem cynical if I say that. But in some cases, it's also not about eating, but rather not eating refined food, sugar, maybe even not eating at all. Because if you look at those countries in the Middle East, they have an obesity problem. They have increased inflammation because of that. So this is why it's so interesting to look at the whole world and how all these different systems work. Because, for instance, in China with traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda in India, some of these more holistic approaches to health are now being rediscovered. in our mission of looking at, longevity science, because we suddenly say, oh, well, the mental aspect is important and all those other aspects, or even the supplements that you see. I'm not the biggest fan because you don't always need supplements, but still, some of these supplements have interesting findings attached to them, and they are being rediscovered because they've been used in Ayurveda or TCM for a long time.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. These are some of the things that and that I try to communicate to people through social media handles and all that. And a lot of people are uh, so excited about the use of supplements, and they don't know the impact. The problem is that most people can just say something is supplement, and once you mention that it's a supplement, they there won't be critical review of that properties. It becomes there is always an oversight when a supplement is mentioned, especially with the regulatory bodies. And these regulatory bodies are not able to pay attention for pharmaceutical products completely. And then you talk about supplementation in a country like Nigeria, where the medicines, things like clinical trials and pharmacovigilance, is not taken serious. So I always tell people to eat right, eat their natural food, and to do that properly. And I was so excited about when you mentioned traditional medicine, and most people seem not to understand the efficacy of traditional medicine. And someone also said something that is very important. The most companies from Asia and maybe South Africa comes to Nigeria and they introduce network marketing for supplement sales. And third world countries where there is a high rate of unemployment, people would want to sell so that they promise them things like cars, international trips, and all that. They abandon everything and focus on forcing people to take those medication. I'll give you a practical example, and this is a critical review. I've gone to the office, I've visited the head office of Jiximore Tries in Cape Town, South Africa. I've looked at the things that they use in production of Jiximore. It is buchu, herb, and aloe vera. But this is a product that is being sold in Nigeria to cure almost everything, including hepatitis B and HIV. And people are buying it. It cures nothing. I've written so much and people don't care. I've said so much about that. Done a lot of critical review. I visited the office. I've looked at the facility. SAPRA in South Africa never gave it any registration number, but it got NAFDAC registration number in Nigeria. And nobody is talking about that. It is problematic. And people are suffering from kidney, liver problems, and all that. In fact, once you do a critical review in Nigeria, the people that you are trying to defend will come after you. They will tell you that you've not built any company and you want to bring down another person's company. So it is the problem. I think the problem, my aunt is a distributor, and I keep on saying this. She said, you must stop. I said, I'm not. So she said, that's her business. That's where she makes money. And I said, you can't be making money from people's life. So we must be serious as advocates of life. We must understand the place of critical review, and we must also understand the place of doing things right to improve the quality of life of the people. Because what we are doing here is to help people to add more life to their years and more years to their life. So you can't do that by saying anything can go. So we must do the right thing and with the right information. But thank you so much, Prof. Sorry for keeping you. I really appreciate your time. If there are more questions, I don't know if we still have any other questions. here.
Now, I think we covered all, and thank you very much for
Okay.
the opportunity to speak here and go a little bit through the things that are important to us at GCLS. If there are any questions that come up additionally, please at any point just reach out to me. I will be happy to also add them in writing. Oh,
Okay.
there is a question. So maybe a last question by Charles. What's the role of the
There are a lot of
government
questions now. So this is what we
in
have
the
to do. This is what we have to do. I'll collect the questions and send to you through email because we have a lot of questions here. We have Pulse, we have Neti. Neti raised her hands first, and some questions in the comment section. I'll gather the question and send to you via email and then or WhatsApp and then forward it to them.
Of course, of course. No, happy to, but maybe regarding Charles' question, because I still saw that. What's the role
Okay.
of the government? So I think the government has a very important role because it's really about doing multiple things at once. So one of them, of course, when we talk about education, initially, it's important that we create the possibility for doctors to start learning about all these things. So maybe either integrating that into the medical study program or alternatively, at least offering it as continuing education. Then we have to think about regulatory. So the doctors need to know what are they supposed to do with their patients, because I think in many cases they are excited and may actually offer some things that are not legally available in the country or shouldn't be, like peptides in some countries. And last but not least, and this is maybe the most important one, but it's the most abstract, I think we need to change the model of healthcare as of now, because usually, and this is not in any way the fault of the doctor, you go and see a doctor if there is a problem, and then the doctor treats you for that problem, and he gets money for that. It would be nice if we came up with a system where the doctor is incentivized to keep you healthy. So not a system where a doctor gets paid for by treating you as in a disease state, but rather trying to prevent that disease state. But that is almost philosophical, of course, and we need a lot of stakeholders to make that happen. But we need a more preventative approach. The government and the insurance, state insurance or private insurance, should be willing to invest into preventative health measures, because only by doing this, they will end up saving money in the end. And to be honest, this is the only language that governments understand. It's about money. But I mean, if that gets us to this point, then I think everybody is fine with that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. There are a lot of companies in South Africa doing that, and they even incentivize you for working for a long period of time. I also have an agency that is doing that for Nigerians, and I have a team of longevity clinicians and doctors and researchers working with me with that. But people don't want to people don't want to take care of their body. They want to get sick. And there is this recent data that was published. Neti, you attended a conference in KZN, and they say before you get to the doctor, when you are sick, you are already 60% dead. So most people don't understand the power of preventative healthcare and why you should have your doctor prevent you from getting sick instead of intervention. Upstream biology, which is preventative healthcare, is more important than intervention, which is problematic and complex. Thank you so much, Prof. I
Thank you.
do have a nice day or evening.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. Thank you, everybody, for listening in, and it was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye bye.